The world of Frank Herbert's Dune and the subsequent novels in the series is so vast that Herbert includes a glossary of terms at the end of the first novel. Titled Terminology of the Imperium, it defines the term Amtal or Amtal rule as a common rule on primitive worlds in which something is tested to determine its limits or defects, commonly testing to destruction. Paul Atreides, Dune's protagonist, first encounters the Amtal rule when he's 15 years old and stranded with his mother, Lady Jessica, on a desert planet, Arrakis. Even though the glossary defines Amtal as a sign of a primitive culture, this concept of intense testing can be found in all parts of the different societies in Dune, even if it has a different name. Paul's tests in Dune have the function of defining what it means to be human within three different societies: the Bene Gesserit, the Fremen, and the class system. Paul's tests are important because they are both essential to propelling the plot forward and are useful for exploring larger themes within the story, such as the function of will and the difference between choice and destiny. As the novel progresses, he must learn to balance the three sides of himself, but this balance does not occur without both inner and external conflicts, because each society has competing notions of what it means to be human. And because he must maintain membership of each society in some way, no matter how much the idea disgusts him in some cases, Paul eventually must become a synthesis of all three. He becomes the Kwisatz Haderach, the male Bene Gesserit who is known as the one who can be many places at once, Lisan al-Gaib of the Fremen, a prophet known as the voice from the outer world, and something we'll keep a secret for now for those who only watched the first movie. In Dune, the Bene Gesserit undertake an enormous effort to differentiate between the humans and animals, prizing what is human according to their standards above all else. Paul, as a child and student of a Bene Gesserit mother, is born and bred with this belief, but as the story progresses, it becomes obvious to him that these boundaries are not as fixed as he has been led to believe. In the famous opening pages of Dune is the first example we see of the Amtal rule, though it is not outwardly labeled as such. Paul Atreides undergoes a mysterious test at the behest of Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam. Since birth, Paul's mother, Lady Jessica, has been a member of the Secretive Bene Gesserit, a quasi-religious sect of women who control and influence both politics and religion throughout the universe. The test Paul is about to undergo is a rite of passage for young female Bene Gesserit acolytes. It is rarely given to males. 15-year-old Paul is separated from his mother and asked by Mohiam to place his hand inside what seems to be an innocuous green metal box. As soon as he does so, the Reverend Mother states the rules of the test. Paul must keep his hand inside the box no matter what happens, or he will die by her hand, which holds the Gom Jabbar, a needle laced with poison that Mohiam states kills only animals. Outraged and offended, Paul asks, "You dare suggest the Duke's son is an animal?" And Mohiam replies, "Let us say I suggest you may be human." The test is designed to define and determine who has what the Bene Gesserit consider to be human qualities, and those few who pass the test are welcomed into the ranks of human beings. Paul asks Reverend Mother what is in the box, and she simply replies, "Pain." Paul's fear, of course, rises. If the alternative to withdrawing his hand from the box is death, what terrible thing lies inside? In the book, Paul begins to chant the Bene Gesserit prayer, the litany against fear, to calm himself. In the film, Jessica reciting the litany contributes to the scene's captivating rhythm and builds towards its dramatic climax. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will let it pass over and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. When the fear has gone, there will be nothing, only I will remain. In Dune, the litany against fear is designed to link a rhetorical and biological function. A person chants the litany to calm themselves, and the litany activates the biological functions necessary for that person to become calm. These devices are part of the way of the Bene Gesserit, which emphasize self-control, self-discipline, and ensure that the will always overrides instinct. While the litany successfully performs its function for Paul, his pain is increasing. He asks the Reverend Mother about the purpose of the test, and she replies, "You've heard of animals chewing off a leg to escape a trap. That's an animal kind of trick. A human would remain in the trap, endure the pain, feigning that he might kill the trapper and remove a threat to his kind." She states that the test is designed to separate humans from animals. Humans, according to the tenets of the Bene Gesserit, possess masterful cunning, control, and contemplation. It is essential for the Bene Gesserit to separate so-called human qualities from what they consider animalistic behavior, behaviors based in instinct, desperation, and powerlessness. According to the Bene Gesserit, the key to being human is not necessarily being able to escape or avoid a trap, but an ability to understand that sometimes becoming ensnared can be beneficial. The box is this kind of trap. It tests whether or not a Bene Gesserit will succumb to her baser animal instincts or her nobler human ones. Paul, stuck in the trap, is in agony. Though he cannot see what is happening to his hand, he imagines his skin curling black on the agonized hand, the flesh crisping and dropping away until only charred bones remain. This language reduces Paul's body to flesh and emphasizes the extreme pain of the test. The power of physical pain lies in its ability to override the rationality of the brain, to kickstart instinct and immediate desire rather than calculation. Paul knows that if he succumbs to the pain and withdraws his hand from the box, he will die, and so he must control his impulse even when it feels like his hand is being burned into ash. Mohaim calls an end to the test, instructing him to take his hand out of the box and greeting him as young human. Paul withdraws his hand from the box and discovers that it is entirely unharmed. However, the intensity of the pain is already ingrained in his memory. But Mohaim dismisses the terrible pain he has endured. She states that a human can override any nerve in the body, meaning that a human's will is stronger than any pain. She states that the test is like sifting sand. We Bene Gesserit sift people to find the humans. The distinction she makes between mere people and humans is key to the reader's understanding of the Bene Gesserit's standpoint. Mohaim states that the true objective of the test is crisis and observation, not merely to inflict pain on the subject to determine how much the subject is willing to endure, but to watch the actions of that subject, to see how they act under duress. According to the Bene Gesserit, a true human would withstand pain even at the risk of enduring the loss of a limb for a greater purpose. All others, including those who would risk death to put an end to the torture, are merely animals. Bene Gesserit attempt to subvert the animalistic desires of humans. The Gom Jabbar test is designed to ensure this separation between human and animal by emphasizing the so-called human will over the animal instinct and flesh. As Mohaim states, the poison of the Gom Jabbar can kill only animals, which implies that the Bene Gesserit are somehow immune to it. The Bene Gesserit define human according to their own abilities. The reason why the Gom Jabbar kills only animals is because a Bene Gesserit has the ability to neutralize poisons within her own body through complete metabolic control, another ability related to their belief in self-mastery. The Bene Gesserit keep all their secrets close because secrecy is key to their power. Even the Bene Gesserit's use of the term sister and mother is ironic because those terms are applied to metaphorical sisters and mothers. The women themselves are not supposed to know the identities of their parents unless they are acknowledged daughters of nobles. In the opening pages of the novel, Jessica quotes another important lesson from her order. I am Bene Gesserit. I exist only to serve. Sisters of the Bene Gesserit do as they are told. They seduce whom they are ordered to seduce and are sold as concubines for more significant and important attachments, as Lady Jessica was given to Duke Leto, Paul's father. Though marriage and the creation of family bonds is not strictly banned, service to the order is expected to come before these bonds. If the sisterhood orders a sister to bear a daughter, she is expected to bear a daughter regardless of her own wishes or desires. But in a rare streak of independence that defies the Bene Gesserit's value of service and obedience, Jessica gives birth to Paul rather than to a daughter as she was ordered. Jessica is a noted rule breaker. She exemplifies the ability of the Bene Gesserit, but is willing to break their rules when it suits her. Not only does she defy the sisterhood by bearing Paul out of love and attachment to Duke Leto, to whom she remains concubine, not wife, she also teaches her son their ways, a practice that, if not outright banned, is certainly highly controversial. When Jessica bears a son instead of a daughter out of love for Leto, it is because she is loyal to her own wishes rather than subverting herself to any other person's will. Leto wanted a son, but Jessica was not obligated to bear him one. She chose to do so because she both had the ability and the will. Jessica's choices, both to bear a son and teach him the secret ways of her sect, run counter to the central tenet of blind obedience among the Bene Gesserit. They remind the reader that in spite of the Bene Gesserit's desire to control their acolytes by taking away their autonomy through choice, this ability to choose and perhaps make erroneous choices is another aspect of being human that does not fit into the limited definition of human that the Bene Gesserit employ. Therefore, when Jessica states, I am Bene Gesserit, I exist only to serve, it is deeply ironic as Jessica serves only when it benefits her or her son. As Dr. Yu says, they exist to serve, but they also serve their own designs. Paul too questions this tenet of obedience. At the beginning of this scene and the novel, Mohiam talks Paul into taking the test by calling into question his obedience to his mother, who has expressed to him how important the test is to her. The Bene Gesserit believe that power lies in obedience, which is why they value it so highly. Near the end of Mohiam's visit, she gives Paul another idiom, that which submits rules. To explain what she means, she states, "The willow submits to the wind and prospers until one day it is many willows, a wall against the wind. That is the willow's purpose." The meaning of this idiom addresses many of the beliefs of the Bene Gesserit, that in order to prosper, one must submit themselves to the role demanded of them, that there is always a purpose higher than one's own desires, and lastly that the power of survival lies not in forcibly seizing power, because once power is seized there's always the problem of keeping it, but always outnumbering and outmaneuvering one's enemies. There is no question that Paul will become Duke after his father. All of his education and training has revolved around him becoming a powerful Duke, both capable of maintaining or perhaps even increasing his family's status in the caste system, as well as being an inspiring and respected leader. Paul's father is intelligent, charismatic, and generous. He has earned the love of a woman as formidable as Lady Jessica, as well as the devotion of his men, and Paul is expected to follow in his footsteps. But by being born into nobility, Paul must sacrifice any desire or wish that is not relevant for the role he is expected to assume as an adult. Like his mother, he too exists to serve his house, his legacy, and his class system. Unlike most of the people in the universe, Paul has had access to the finest education possible because of his social status. Not only has he been trained since birth as a mentat, the specially trained masters of logic, reason, and analysis with exceptional memory and cognitive skills that quite literally take the place of artificial intelligence, he has learned the way of the Bene Gesserit at his mother's knee. He's also a skilled fighter and military leader, but Paul's skills come from more than just careful and expensive training. He's also the result of a centuries-long breeding program by the Bene Gesserit. Thousands of years of careful genetic manipulation, controlled breeding, and forced sexual partnerships have resulted in his particular genetic makeup. We witness Paul's ability as he shrewdly discerns hidden motives from the smallest conversational clues, infers unknown truths from habitual gestures, detects secret exits from air currents and flight paths from storm turbulence, always sees hints of opportunity in the shifting of desert sands. Paul extracts significance from observations that for most of us would be mute and meaningless. With this in mind, Paul's journey to becoming human and then to redefining that definition is cast in a new light. Was Paul indeed as born a human as anyone could be, or did he become human? Paul's survival of the various tests he endures is often a direct result of his training and education, but is his genetic makeup the key to his ability to learn, comprehend, and practice those teachings at all? There is something deeper in Paul's perception, possibly cultivated and encouraged by the loving relationship between his parents that pulls him away from the Bene Gesserit in spite of his training in many of the qualities he values. During her initial meeting with Paul, Mohiam states that one of the reasons why the Bene Gesserit order was founded was because there were those who saw the need of a thread of continuity in human affairs. They saw there could be no such continuity without separating human stock from animal stock for breeding purposes. Paul's disgust at her words is significant. Mohiam's talk of stock and breeding dehumanizes people and the relationships they cultivate, implying that every human's main purpose, no matter what their status, is nothing more than to breed. Paul perceives that all humans are not merely stock to be bred, but are autonomous and deserve to choose whom they have children with. Though Paul has been extensively schooled in the way of the Bene Gesserit, he's not loyal to them in the way they demand their acolytes to be, and attitudes such as those held by Mohiam actively repulse him. Jessica obviously has noticed her son's strong moral streak and labeled it as his instinct for rightness, suggesting that she approves of it, and it is also key to note Jessica's use of the word instinct. According to the Bene Gesserit, instinct is something to be suppressed in favor of will or intellect, since instinct is associated with animalistic behavior. Paul is immensely valuable to the Bene Gesserit, and his distrust of them will have repercussions that are far more severe than a young duke merely disregarding some of his education. The Bene Gesserit offered the reader and the viewer the first definition of humanity in Dune. This definition is narrow, elitist, and simplistic. In spite of their attempt to segregate and emphasize what is most human from what could be considered base and animal, it betrays many of the qualities the humans value most. Our capacity to make self-determined choices and mistakes, our ability to learn from those choices, and our ability to form bonds of love, friendship, and loyalty are actively discouraged under the Bene Gesserit's definition of humanity. Their human is a person who has advanced abilities but uses those abilities to serve the often dubious aims of others without question or choice. But the human characters encountered in the Dune series are recognizably human, not only physically but in their weaknesses and struggles. They hold bonds of loyalty, admiration, and love. Their abilities, both physical and mental, are most often the result of long training, so the elitism often displayed by characters like the Reverend Mother is a construct. Everyone in the Dune universe is human, but the judgment of what constitutes a human and who is allowed to be human is constantly in flux. The Gom-Jabbar test and the Reverend Mother distinction between animals and humans serve as a thought-provoking exploration of our own understanding of human nature and our relationship with ourselves. By engaging with these themes, we can appreciate the complexity of the human experience and recognize our moral responsibility towards ourselves to become better individuals. Just as Paul, guided by his moral responsibility, recognized his own potential and accepted his destiny by taking responsibility for his own development and growth. His character development serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of self-awareness and personal growth in navigating the complexities of the human experience. The Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam does not appear for the majority of the story, but we might say that her shadow remains following the hero. And as the story progresses, the Bene Gesserit's definition of humanity will be tested, redefined, and finally, in a true fashion of the Amtal rule, nearly destroyed. Thank you for watching part 1 of the Dune analysis. In the next video, I will expand on the Bene Gesserit's definition of humanity by using a culture that both the Bene Gesserit and the entire Empire have dismissed as unimportant, the Fremen. Subscribe if you're interested, leave a like to support this video, and thank you so much for watching. This was Heads and Tails. Till next time.